Hello and welcome to Maryland Firearms and Tactical Training. I'm Ramsey Stimson, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the 6.5 Creedmoor at the reloading bench. Had a few questions from viewers, and I've seen a lot of discussion online about some issues with 6.5 Creedmoor that are easy to overcome. Most cartridges are very simple to reload. Some have a few quirks, and once you get to know those quirks, it's easy to overcome that and load them. And so I wanted to go over a few things about the 6.5 Creedmoor that might help answer your questions and make it a little bit easier for you. Now, we're going to be using Sig Sauer Elite Brass today. We're going to be using the CCI number 34 primers because I am loading for a AR-10 platform. We are going to be using a case lube pad and the Lyman case lube, because I find that actually works best with the 6.5 rather than the spray lube, because up until I started loading 6.5 Creedmoor since like 1978, I've been loading cartridges of one form or another. I'd never had a stuck cartridge or a stuck case in my die ever, and the very first time I tried to load 6.5 and just use a spray lube, I got a stuck case, and I got it unstuck and I started over again, and a few cases later got another one stuck. So I found that using a lube pad and a good case lube, and in my case I prefer the Lyman, and it works really well for me. We'll be using the Winchester Sta-Ball 6.5 powder, very stable powder, meters really well through my Lyman automatic powder dispenser and scale. And we're going to be using the SST 140 grain Hornady bullets. These aren't made specifically for the 6.5 Creedmoor. These aren't the long range like the Yellow DX, but I find they work extremely well, and their performance for me on whitetail deer has been outstanding. Every deer that I've hit with this, even a couple that were marginal hits, have done their job, and no deer's gone more than 30 yards. So it's a component that I really like. I'm not a face for any of these products. I don't get paid to tell you to use any of this. These are the products that I use and have used for years and know to be good stuff. That's why I tell you about them. We're going to be using the Lee Classic turret press and the inline fabrication reverse index auto eject system, along with the Lee Ultimate rifle dice for 6.5 Creedmoor. So I always start by lubing the cases, and I've already lubed a few. I've already run a few, but I'll take 5 at a time typically and just put them in my hand, lay them on the pad, and give them a good roll. And with that, I'll drop them into the bin here, and we'll get started. I like to close the cover to my lube pad once I've done that, because if you do spill powder, it can get really messy. It's something that I've done more than once, unfortunately, over the years. A couple of people talk about the seating depth for the 6.5, and a couple of questions I had were, do I have to seat the cantilever on a bullet that is either shorter or longer? And the answer is actually no. The cantilever is there to give you a little extra grip. It's a good reference point, but as you can see, with perhaps if that shows up well enough for you, both of these are 6.5 Creedmoors. Both of these are the 140 grain SST. One is seated at the cantilever, and one is seated above the cantilever or below the cantilever. So this one is at the cantilever. This one is below the cantilever. This one is at my max overall length for the chambering of the AR-10 and for fit in the magazine in order for it to feed properly. And this one is at the cantilever. And I actually loaded these separately and tested them against one another at the range, and found that for the firearm that I was shooting, it made no difference in the accuracy. So the jump to rifling in that rifle apparently isn't terribly critical, because this is a good bit of difference between the cantilever and not at the cantilever and being at full length. But making sure I bump the shoulder back far enough when I'm resizing making sure, of course, that I'm seating the primer at the appropriate depth, making sure that I'm lubing it properly so it doesn't stick in the die. Okay, making sure that my overall length is correct for my firearm and for the magazine feed. Those are some of the hints that I can give you on loading 6.5 that are going to alleviate any issues that you have. I've had people ask about powder, and Ogden 4350 is an extremely popular powder with the 6.5 rifles, and the temperature stability of the 4350 is legendary. The accuracy of the 4350 is legendary. It doesn't feed through some powder systems as well as a ball powder, so that's where the Stay Ball 6.5 comes in and works really, really well. I encourage you to try different components, test the components and the setup that you use and your recipes to make sure that it's functioning. Don't take someone else's word for it and load up 50 or 100 or 200 rounds only to find out that you've got to pull every one of those rounds apart. That's no fun either. With my cases lubed, I'm now ready to actually just start my loading process. So I'm going to take a lubed case. I'm going to put it into my shell holder. I'm going to run it up into my resizing die, and I'm going to bump it down extra hard. The way I have this die set is turned down just a little bit further than normal so that it's not just a simple cam over with the press. When I bring the lever down, it's going to actually be a little bit harder. I'm going to actually give it a little bump. That makes sure that I push that shoulder on that case back far enough. If you don't push the shoulder back far enough on the 6.5, when you go ahead and you try and chamber that round, especially in like an AR-10 or a semi-automatic platform, it's not going to go in all the way. If you've got a free floating firing pin that strikes that primer and sets it off, now you're going to have an out of battery experience. And if you've never had one, it's unique, it's not fun, and not something you really want to deal with. That is one of the reasons that I also use the CCI primers, because they're harder. They're designed for weapons with a free floating firing pin. But even in a bolt action, you might be able to get that bolt down, fire it. But you might also have trouble extracting it, especially with a semi-automatic, even though it goes in all the way or it stops and you're able to forward assist it. When you set that round off, now it might not eject. You might not be able to get it out. If it doesn't go all the way in, if you aren't able to fire it, you might not be able to get it out without disassembling the firearm, and that's no fun either. No gunsmith wants you to walk through the door with a firearm announcing, I've got a loaded firearm and I need help. They don't like that either. So if you bump that shoulder back far enough, you're not going to have that problem. And once I've got my cases set up and lubed and everything set properly on the press, and I've run it and it's loading the overall length where I want it to be, and I'm comfortable, I can just fly. I can just go ahead and pop in a case, make sure that I am pushing the neck back as far as it needs to be. I am loading a primer, and then I am dropping my powder charge. I'm doing everything nice and slow because I don't want to get in a hurry and make a mistake, miss a step, forget to put my primer in, not have the proper powder charge, not use the proper rhythm and the same pressures and strokes. I want to make sure that I'm doing a good crimp, but not an overly tight crimp. And when I have loaded a few rounds, I'm going to stop and I'm going to check that overall case length. I'm going to wipe the lube off of the case, and I'm going to drop it into my case gauge. I want to make absolutely certain that it drops in, that it's flush, that it drops out. I don't have to tap it. I don't have to push it in. It's not going to stick, because if it doesn't, as we've talked about before, if it sticks, if it doesn't drop in and out, you're going to have problems. I can check my overall length to make sure that my seating is appropriate and that everything else is spot on. And I typically do that probably every 10 rounds or so. So as long as everything looks good, then I can just roll on, so to speak. Thanks again for joining us. appreciate any input you might have. You can subscribe to our channel. You can hit that bell. You can get notifications from us. You can email us at rlstimson@mfatt.com. You can hit us up at www.mfat.com. You can even call us at 410-991-0579. If I can, I answer the phone. And we do have a metallic cartridge reloading class coming up soon. I am a certified metallic cartridge reloading instructor through the NRA, and we've got a class coming up in August. So any questions about that, give us a call, hit us on our website. You'll see our class schedule. And as always, thank you for joining us.